presented by Peterborough Speedway, the Pro Junior Late Model, and you're watching ONTrack Weekly.
Everybody, what's going on? Cam K with you. ONTrack Weekly is live here on GeForce TV. I want to thank my good buddy Chase Stevenson for that beautiful intro for tonight's show. Let's get our first sneeze out of the way. All right, now that we've dealt with that, I got to meet Chase this past weekend, who's filling in for Maya Ford out at Sunset Speedway in the Junior Late Model Division. And really great stuff that he was able to do out at Sunset. A second time that Chase Stevenson had been there. We've got his car actually up on the screen in a beautiful photo taken by Jim Clark. Jim Clark, if you don't know, does a lot of the photos for Peterborough Speedway. And this one is an absolute great shot of the 77 in practice a couple weeks ago. But Chase was out there helping Maya Ford, who was not able to be at the racetrack, and wasn't feeling very comfortable in practice, actually. And they weren't sure if he was going to do the feature, do the heat races, but they worked on it, thanks to the help of a fellow competitor in Keegan Moat. And he was able... I'm laughing because Calvin Reeser knows the deal here on ONTrack Weekly that we need a sneeze counter, and if I get to it, we have to give away a prize pack. It's a pretty good idea actually, there, Calvin, because we know every time I do an episode here, I need to sneeze, but I haven't sneezed all day actually, but I have to sneeze now. But competitor wise, Keegan Moat. He's a veteran of the Junior Late Models. It's going to be his last year. He's 15. He's going to move up to something else, and helping out a young kid, Chase Stevenson, like that. And comes back. Keegan was involved in a spin. Josh Davenport won the race, and Chase Stevenson, in a car that's not his, was able to come back and finish second. Absolutely love that. Great story. And we absolutely love having stuff like that in the racing scene. I mean, we talk a lot about the winners and we talk about accidents and who was mad at who, but we want to hear some of the good stories sometimes. And you know what, to have Chase Stevenson at the racetrack and to do an intro for this week. We got a great one for next week too. Our buddy Chris Allard has put one together for next week's episode, which you're going to definitely love. But love hearing competitors helping competitors. We saw it actually a lot. Steve McCaw was involved in a wreck, pieced the car back together, got it back on the racetrack thanks to his competitors. We saw the same thing in the Ontario Sportsman Series. Doug Cathcart, they were working on the car, and Rob Ferguson, Ollie's dad, crew chiefing, I guess, for the night. And he went down and helped Cathcart's team work on their car while they were pitting. That's the type of stuff that you want to see in racing. It just anywhere we talk to the legend car racers, they were the same. Everybody willing to help each other out. That's the stuff that it makes this sport so very great. And speaking of Ollie Ferguson, we're repping the kid today. OSR shirt. Now they are out at the moment. They do have more though coming. They'll order more. So reach out, Ollie Strong Racing on social media. They can help you out with getting a shirt to support Ontario Sportsman Series racing and supporting a great racer and a young racer, 14 years old, driving stock cars. So definitely reach out if you're interested. Ollie was involved in the OSS race. Unfortunately, lost brakes early, halfway, and broke a fitting on the caliper as well, which didn't make it for a fun evening. Came away with an 8th place finish though, so kudos to him for putting that together. But as you see to the right of me, or I guess that's to the depending on where we're looking, it's my left, but on your right of the screen, Brad Robinson got his very first Ontario Sportsman Series win at Sunset Speedway. We're talking about stuff that's fantastic to see. New winners is always something fantastic to see. I love seeing this week in and week out. You can't always have the same people win, right? So having new winners besides Junior Farley with the APC series pick up his very first win, that's great stuff to start a season. With having some new winners, new faces in victory lane. Corey McAllister has been dominant in the OSS, winning 4 of his last 5 starts. And that car has won 5 of the last 5 races. So, or 4 of the last 4 races. It is quite remarkable to have a new story, somebody come in that's been working so hard. And oddly enough, 3 races in the OSS in the last 3 seasons have all had a driver win their first career pole and their first career race in the same event. In 2022, Kevin Trevelyan at Peterborough won the pole, won his very first event. In 2023, last year, it was Brendan Patrick at Peterborough, and then we start off with Brad Robinson. Jaslyn, thank you from Chase. We definitely appreciate it, and I mean it's always great to meet the young racers out there, and thank you, Chase, for giving us our intro, which we'll use on rotation here on ONTrack Weekly. Of course, if you want to submit one, you can very much find me on social media. Send me, if you're a driver in Ontario, asphalt driver, send me an intro. Basically just state your name, what you drive, your sponsors, division, make it as interesting as you want. Send it to us and say you're watching ONTrack Weekly. Yes, Pops, I know you owe me one, but you're a little busy this week. There was a lot of great stuff that took place this past week. There's some crazy stuff too, so we're going to dive into it. This is not really going to be a bunch of showing, talking about next week's and stuff. There's a lot of stories and a lot of opinions that I would like to get from the viewers. One of the things that I think is very interesting that we need to talk about is heat races. We saw it at Peterborough Speedway this past weekend where a bunch of cars got wrecked in heat races. Trucks got wrecked in heat races due to an engine issue. And we've seen it time and time again where cars get into it. Sunset Speedway, radiator was punctured on one of the cars. It did get back out, but radiator was punctured during a heat race. And this is always a hot topic, is it ideal in 2024 to be doing heat races on top of a feature? Now, Sunset has cut the amount of heat races that they do. They do one set of heat races. Is it something that all tracks should be doing? Is it ideal? Is it useful? Personally, I like seeing 2 features a night. I like that, especially with the Pure Stock division out at Flamborough. I think they do an amazing job. The the pure stock division at Flamborough, I think, is one of the best. In terms of, we'll get a little bit more into the pure stock conversation in a little bit, because Sauble Speedway opened up their season. So did Grand Bend. And then it opens up another interesting question about how many cars is too little. Do you put on a race or do you not? Do you end an event because of the lack of vehicles remaining? We saw some of that this past weekend. We also saw Carson Nagy continue his domination this season. Superstocks have a king, and it's Carson Nagy in 2024. Easily, Carson Nagy has been on the rise for a while, and we've seen it naturally growing, getting better and better each week. That McCall car is hooked up. To the T, hooked up. Carson Nagy goes out and he wins, they said, the third of 4 Peterborough races that they've had there for the Dayco Superstocks. He comes off of winning again in the Superstock division out at Delaware Speedway, going for another championship, potentially doing a double championship again. Not something that I think we would be considering this early into 2024. However, that Humberview Parts team, Carson Nagy, they are hooked up. They know what they're doing. And while Sean Chenoweth did give him a run for his money, and I think at the end of that Peterborough race, we saw a happy Sean Chenoweth, a car that he feels really good about. That could be dangerous for Carson Nagy in the Dayco Superstock Championship. In terms of his weekly racing out at Delaware Speedway, that's more of an open battle week to week. Trevor Culver, you can never count out. The amount of stories that we had this past weekend were really fantastic. I mean, at Sunset, we had some at Full Throttle. We had a very interesting situation at Flamborough as well, and we're going to get to all of that, but let's start off with the Ontario Sportsman Series, something that I'm very familiar with. Out at Sunset Speedway, we see this picture of Brad Robinson up on the top of the car celebrating. They do 3 p.m. starts out at Sunset Speedway. You also have the Ontario Legend cars out there. The TQ Midgets, Can-Am Midgets were out there as well. The Bone Stocks and the Junior Late Models. And, of course, we already talked about the Junior Late Models earlier. Josh Davenport gets another win. Son of Todd Davenport, great racer in his own right. And Josh Davenport picking up steam in the Junior Late Models out at Sunset Speedway. The Ontario Legends, Mitch Wright gets the win in the number 21. And in the TQ Midgets, it was a good battle between James Stanley, Paul Jorgensen battling up front. I believe in the end, year 57 of James Stanley gets the race victory. And I'm always a little iffy watching those midgets. They're a little bit crazier than most racers, and the Legends again putting on a good show. And for the most part, those races were clean. We got to the Bone Stocks, and their race was clean once again. A lot of really great stuff happening in these weekly divisions, these touring divisions. We know we've had some trouble in some of the touring divisions this year with accidents, and to have a very clean night for the most part was excellent. The Bone Stocks, Chris Allard comes from the back. He wins again, but he doesn't, in a way, he didn't have this. It wasn't a gimme for him. To make his way through the field, and the field is quite tough out at Sunset Speedway, but Chris Allard comes back, gets the victory in the 76. Very solid, and Chris is a definite personality. I absolutely love that he has the music going around the racetrack. That's something that fans will absolutely love, and that's comical as well. I think it's a very fun thing to do for the fans, for the kids, and Chris definitely is a talent for sure behind the wheel. Definitely want to give a best wishes out to Phil Givens. He was involved in a very hard wreck last week out at Flamborough Speedway. Very, very tough. Car was pretty damaged as well. So Phil's still recovering from that, but I just want to send my best wishes out to him. We'll jump back and forth from all over because there's lots of different things to talk about. We talked about the clean start to those events out at Sunset Speedway. However, that did not result in a main event that was very clean. The Ontario Sportsman Series had a very tough time keeping the race under green. Lots of contact throughout the entire night. A lot of veterans that, we would say would know a little bit better in how to race and not make contact, especially considering last year the Ontario Sportsman Series went green to checkered at Sunset Speedway and had one caution in 2 races. Unfortunately, this time around, it felt like there was 12 cautions. And unfortunately, Race Monitor had issues with scoring, which caused further delays. And unfortunately, it comes down to a lot of different things. We have situations where we're so reliant on electronic technology as well that it all of a sudden, when stuff doesn't work, you got to kind of think on the fly. And that's what had to happen. Aside from, I believe, 2 vehicles, everybody else was involved in something. That's not how any series wants things to go. But there was a lot of conversation regarding lap cars. And I'm curious, we've got racers that have been watching the show, what your opinion is. If you're battling with another lap car for position, should you automatically give way? Obviously, you're being given the blue flag. There was some movements in this OSS race that made us question what people were doing. It's a respect level that you need to give to the leaders, those that are battling for the win. Corey McAllister had himself a time trying to get by lap traffic, and it cost him by getting a flat tire and by losing the lead. And he said flat out, if they don't give me a lane, I'm going to make one. Ultimately, you might not like that call, but there's a reason why there is a blue flag. I'm hoping that racers understand that. Now, it goes all the way back down to a lot of different divisions here. Entry level. We saw a huge crash at Delaware Speedway with Will Quarry towards the end of the race. Huge crash. Probably one of the hardest hits I've seen a bone stock take. And you know what? I thought that the super stock wreck with Connor Van Steensel was big. It goes to a level of, does there need to be some sort of license, some sort of test that you cannot be a part of a division unless you can do something, some sort of test to prove it. Now, we've had great conversations with racers like Cam Thompson, Tegan Ellis, Cody Wilds. They've talked about educational programs that used to be provided at Delaware Speedway where you had to take a course. You had to learn. You had to learn how to drive safe. Calvin Reeser, veteran racer, champion, this has something to say here. He says, should really be able to hold your line. Flag is there should really be a hold your line flag. As someone who races in a division that spreads out easily, it needs to be said in the driver's meeting, you see the blue flag, stay in your lane. And you know what? I know we've always kind of said it's either you go to the low side, but sometimes, and this is what I think happened, is that there was no way to get to the inside because they were battling for position and there was another slow car. It comes down to, I guess, decision making. Mike Campbell, Pops Campbell says, I know this is a tough thing to get into. Rookies should have spotters in practice at minimum for coaching. Again, another interesting point here because, again, if you're getting into that entry level, we don't really have spotters in the junior late model division either, but maybe there is some, I believe there is actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there might be, I don't know if there's, I believe there's spotters in junior late models, but there's not in bone stocks. We kind of need to have, I think, consistency across the board because you are getting people that are getting into racing so much younger. And while it's been a big thing in the U.S. for a long time, I don't know if we've seen kids this young. The junior late models is really growing too, but then they're moving up so much quicker. You've got kids moving into these cars at 13, 14 years old. It's not just them. It's also the and we talked about this actually at the racetrack. It's the grizzled old veterans, the 30 or 40-year-old that says, I'm going to start racing, but don't have a concept of how to navigate in a race because they don't have the experience of a driver that started in junior late models. Reza Racing says, I'd rather know when someone gets that flag, they will stay where they are. Great point. And they will not see the flag and just go to the bottom without checking that there's somebody. And we had that happen a couple of times this past weekend, as Calvin's pointed out here, that you're changing lanes, but you're not looking at both sides as to, is there somebody else there? You can't. It's one of those things that we've seen before in the bone stock divisions, is changing lanes at really not opportune times. Nick Menton says he agrees with both. It's a tough situation to figure out because ultimately you want people to come into entry-level classes. But at the same time, you can't be having people that are coming in that really should not be out there. And let's be honest, there are people that are on the racetrack that don't belong there. Now, you can have warnings. Let's take a perfect example. Let's take Delaware Speedway. It's got over 50 cars, 40 on a regular that go out there. But if you have 40 regular bone stocks and 30 of them are rookies, you cannot expect they're all going to know how to race properly. And you could say, well, there's no such thing as racing properly. Well, there is. There's etiquette. There's respect. There's not just doing whatever the hell you want. Now, I'll say a perfect thing is maybe going to a place where there's less cars, like a Sauble Speedway. I personally think that is better because you're not in so much traffic all the time. Ultimately, you want to give a slow introduction, and that might be the hardest thing. Is there a rookie orientation? Is there something where you have somebody that will tell you or treat you or show you how to do it? That's the hardest thing about it, is that we just want to go in and people just want to go in and race. But I think Pops and Rob can attest to this, that we have people that have gone on the racetrack, and it's not that they're bad. It's just that they need a little bit more coaching. They're too afraid maybe to go the max speed. The car can't go very fast. That's another thing you have to realize, is that if you've got oncoming cars, sometimes what we've seen is reactionary moves. And what I talked about with a racer yesterday is reactionary moves can be extremely dangerous. Instead of taking a calm approach, this is why I can't be a race car driver. Instead of taking a calm approach, there's a reactionary move, a sudden move. And sudden moves can cause accidents, but can also cause reactionary moves, which then cause accidents. Perfect example is if a car spins behind you and the people behind you don't get the message, and then all of a sudden you have further wrecks because people are not paying attention. They're not looking forward. They're not using their entire scope. I can't go out and tell racers how to race. However, what I saw is, and I'm not picking on the OSS here. I'm seeing it in other places as well. But what I really think about is there's some pure stock divisions this year that have been fantastic, but they've got veterans. And I think veteran leadership is extremely important in these introductory divisions. You need to have, and that's the thing we talk about. I was talking with a former racer, and he said, I can't go to the bone stocks because they won't let me. And while I understand the reasoning that you don't want somebody to come in and just wipe the floor with everybody, it might be a better idea to have veterans that are on regular to showcase and show newer racers how to act out there, how to race. And I think that's why I felt that the bone stock division this year out at Sunset Speedway has been so successful at not having a bunch of ridiculous cautions like they've had in the last couple of seasons, is because you've got veterans now there that are starting to show the young guys how to race, do it clean. It's a tough, like, I really understand the concept of you don't want to have somebody that's going to come in and destroy everybody. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, we talked about this if you go back to the historical side of the Xfinity series in the NASCAR divisions, most of the racers talked about that they wanted to be up against a Cup Series driver to be able to beat them, to learn from them. Ultimately, it kind of follows the same tree here, is if you have veterans that have enough experience, we're talking like the Phil Givens, the Chris Allards, the Calvin Reesers of the world, that know how to drive a bone stock, and will show you. For the longest time, you saw it out at Delaware with Chris and Joe Lawrence. And that's, okay, so a great point is brought up here, yes. So third period hockey says, spotters in the bone stock division at Delaware would help tremendously. It would save a lot of cars from getting wrecked. Well, ultimately, like we said, we want to prevent the wrecking, but we also want to help the racers become better racers. That's key. Mike says, again, agree someone to lead. Rob says, Ollie was lucky last year. Everyone in the OSS helped him, and more importantly, he listened. And you had Kevin, see, this is the key thing, Kevin Gallant coaching him. Rookies need coaching. And that does not mean only rookies of a certain age. It means anybody that is joining that has never raced before. And that is key. And I'd step up a little bit even more with Robin, people that are in certain divisions. That includes touring divisions, including OSS, including Legends, hi Nala, including all sorts of various divisions. Hell, I'd say even the NASCAR divisions. You can't have people that are coming in that have no experience in racing. You need to have some experience. And if you're coming in, you need to have, so maybe even something of you have to reach a certain lap time, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. Because we all know that there are people that maybe don't belong on a racetrack. And ultimately, they get penalized, or things don't work out. We want people to be safe. That's the biggest thing. It is necessity. It is a necessity to have safe racing. And that's for everybody on the track, the officials, the fans, the photographers, everybody there. Maybe we need a buddy program for rookies when they are paired with a veteran driver to mentor and coach them. You know, I know you say LOL, though, third period hockey, but I almost don't feel that's, I don't think that that's a horrible idea, especially if you have, let's say, a 14-year-old going into the bone stock division. If they've got no experience, you'd think that would be a good call. There are going to be people that have lots of help. A perfect example, we talked about Ollie going into the stock cars at 13, but he had the help of Kevin Gallant, who raced those cars for years and has been a racer for years. But he was coaching him. He was showing him how to do it. He was teaching him how to do it. It's different if you go in there, you buy a car, but you've never raced it before, and then all of a sudden you show up, you qualify, and now you're racing, but you don't have any experience on how to race it, on how to drive the car, on where your lines should be. You're trying to race it as just racing a car, not, and that's kind of goes back to that respect level. And if you are screwing up, and if you are making mistakes out there, we talked with racers that go when they practice, book a time to go practice. It doesn't matter. Again, age. The tracks they make themselves available. They have open practice days specifically for that. And then you don't know who you'll meet at a practice date. Perfect example. We talked right at the top of the show. Chase Stevenson was not comfortable. And that right there, when I spoke with his mom, and she said if he's not comfortable, he's not going out there. That's what I want to hear. And I don't know if everybody does that. If they're not comfortable, they still go out there. And you can see it. Obviously, you want to be there because you want to put on a show. You want to help, your partners. You want to be able to put on a good race. You want to put on a good product. But it doesn't help the product if you're wrecked. It doesn't help the product if you've wrecked somebody else. There's too much consistent wrecking at the start of the season. We already have people that are losing engines on the first week of the season and they're done. We had a team that lost 2 mini stocks in the span of a one night. One night, the car wouldn't start and then the engine's gone. People are already struggling. And then we don't need to go and wad cars up in heat races. That adds in the heat race component. Is the heat race beneficial for those younger or the newer racers? Is it, or is it just another opportunity to potentially wreck stuff or blow stuff up? Right? If you're going through it, would you rather have that happen where you're earning points or maybe when you're not earning points? This is a very valuable question because Brendan Doherty put this post out about ending events earlier and keeping them to a certain time limit. And I can attest to this. Brendan Doherty is not a dumb guy. He's a very, very smart guy. I think what you want is you want to be able to have fans there for the longest but shortest amount of time. And that might sound ridiculous, but what I mean is you don't want your program going too long so that fans get bored, they get hot, they get tired, they get hungry, or they get bit by a bajillion bugs, or they get cold. You're already up against that. You're up against phones. You're up against streaming, saving money. You could do a lot of this stuff at home, right? Now, one of the problems that I saw when we were out and our race was taking very, very long is we were losing fans. People were getting up and they were leaving because the product is taking too long. Yes, we started at 3 o'clock, but now we're getting into this is like 5 hours now. We're getting into near 8 o'clock. 5 hours, yes, you might think, well, that's not that long. For us hardcore race fans, that would be there. Hell, if we're there at Autumn Colors, we're there from 12 until midnight. Doesn't matter. We will love our racing and we're going to keep loving it. But there's such a large fan base that has young kids. That's asking so much of a parent with young kids and the young kids themselves to stay interested at a racetrack for 5 hours. You have to have fan interaction. So we were at the Sunset Speedway this past week. They were chatting about, we had a fan interaction segment with the OSS. Thankfully, because Brendan and Spencer are they're amazing and they already have programs running. We went in and we did something for the fans that they could win a prize pack, the young fans, the kids, and the kids could all get autographs. The series had posters that they came around. They got hero cards. If it were me, I'd want to have a giant one. You can't do fan appreciation every night, but if you can feature one division each week that gets some into, like, I understand doing races and stuff during intermission, but I totally am okay with, if you're going to have something, have a division, a weekly division at the track that's there, do an autograph session, do giveaways, do something where you're giving something for the kids, because the kids like stuff. They like free stuff. Adults like stuff. They like lots of free stuff. Make it a thrill. Make it something that you can't do. This is what I feel that Spencer and Brendan have done very well at Sunset this year, because they are always putting in something new initiatives each week. You can win this. You can do this. You could do this. You could do this. You could do this. Nick Minton says, t-shirt cannons, always a hit. T-shirts, hats, balloons, ice cream, whatever it is. Honestly, like, somebody had mentioned food trucks. Bring in food trucks for a big event. You know, yeah, sure, you have to spend money, but I think there's the old adage, you have to spend money to make money. You have to put that effort in. If you're, and I'm not trying to take a shot here, but if you're trying to sell people on just hamburgers, that's not enough to draw people to a racetrack. It's not. You have to make the product worth it, and you have to make it short. I think a lot of people would agree that attention spans are not what they were 20, 30 years ago. There is so much that people can do at home now. So much that people can do with the internet. So much that people can do with streaming. So much that people can do within the city, within home. They have video games. You have mobile games. You have stuff that you can do close to home. And you also don't want to spend a ton of money. I think price ranges are pretty good for races. I think they're much cheaper than a lot of other events. I know people have talked about, it's way too expensive. I don't know if it is. I think $20 is okay. Where I think that if you go to, like, I believe it's like the Toronto Zoo, for example, near me, the Toronto Zoo is upwards of $30 a person to get in. It's the zoo, and it's $30. Perfect example, Blue Jays, NHL games. This stuff is really pricey. And you're talking that price, but for like 2 hours. Hockey games typically, what, an hour? You kind of put it all together with the breaks, it's about what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? Altogether? Racing all of a sudden going to be 5 hours to 6 hours is way too long. If we're looking at it, starting the racing at 3 o'clock, to me, if you start the features at 3 o'clock, I understand if you take the heats away, you're kind of losing stuff. But if you did, your hour practice from 3 to 4, I'm just using the 3 o'clock start as an example here. But the other side of it too is you've got your 3 o'clock start. Most people, I think, would love to be home at a reasonable time. And I think that's the biggest thing we talked about. We put a poll up as to why people don't go to certain racetracks and why they don't go there. It's because of the location. So I think a lot of the times people don't want to go to a race that starts at 6 o'clock that's so far away, because when it ends, it's going to be 12, 11 o'clock potentially at night. Now you got to travel home at 11 o'clock at night. And then you're not getting home till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. That's not ideal for people that have kids. That's not ideal for people that are traveling from great distances. A perfect example why I don't go to certain racetracks is because of how far it is. If all of a sudden the races were starting at like 12 o'clock, and it's tough because racetracks have a curfew. They have times that they have to abide by. So you have to be able to sell the product in a short amount of time. Especially, we take like Sauble Speedway's got 5 o'clock to 11. That's all they have. From unloading, getting people in, to the racing being done and engines off. It's not an easy concept. It's not something simple to put together. You kind of have to do as much as you can to make the event completely worth it. I think meeting drivers, getting autographs, you can't typically do that when you go to a sports game. You can't meet the players and get an autograph. That's what makes racing so much better for fan interaction. We just don't do it enough. Let's be honest. We don't. What's different about our racing is you can meet the driver face to face, not behind a trailer. At a merch trailer. They're right there in front of you. Fan interaction is so critical. It's so important. And we've asked, people have said, well, streaming, is it hurting? Is it, it does both. Let's be honest here. It does both. Now, am I going to be going to a racetrack when it's 40 degrees outside? I'm not. Like, physically, I can't. My asthma is so bad when it's so hot outside, when it's really humid. I can't do it physically. So if I'm able to get something like a track tune or a stream, I'm still going to watch the races. But again, are the casual fans going to do that? One of the things that you got to sell is that vehicle that you see at the bottom of the screen. Sell to the kids. Get the younger generation interested. We had McPherson Motorsports joined my buddy Graydon Bunn out at a car show. I believe it was up in Bracebridge. And kids got to sit in the race cars. Great way of getting people interested. And a lot of teams, a lot of drivers are doing that. And we've got to do it. And it's got to go, and they might not like this, but it's got to start at the very top. It's got to start with the NASCAR. NASCAR Canada needs to be doing events. It needs to start with them. You need to go with APC drivers. You need to have super stocks. These young racers, it's how you go out and you meet, and you meet potential partners as well. Motorama is a perfect example of lots of interaction with people, but you never know who you're going to meet outside of the show. There's people that are outside that have never witnessed race cars. They've never witnessed what motorsports can be in Ontario. And we have such a good base here. The amount of racing that takes place across the province and across Ontario as a whole is quite a lot. If you include the dirt and you include pavement, yes, there was a lot more. And I hear this argument all the time that back in my day or back 15 years or back 20 years, it's not then though. It's now. We have opportunities here with G-Force TV to showcase great Ontario racers, talking about them. I want to be able to have this show built a little bit bigger. Unfortunately, because I do so much with other things with the racing community, it does impact the time. But I ultimately believe that the more that we showcase racers, the more that we learn about the personalities, the names, those that can promote our sport the best. And obviously learning from people as well. I mean, I think we have to understand that tracks working together is a good thing. Series working together is another good thing. Do you build a super card? And they were going to a couple years ago, I believe, at Delaware, where you had APC and NASCAR Canada on the same day. Might be a little too much now, because the APC obviously does longer events. But if you can do the Canadian Short Track Nationals at Jukasa Speedway, you can definitely do it at Delaware. Might not attract the same amount of love, but I feel you've got such strong counts right now with the juniors. We have upwards, I believe, of 20 at Peterborough Speedway. This past week we had 10 junior late models. You look at it and go, well, that's not that much. It's increasing. If you look, I believe at this time last year when Sauble opened, there was 3 at Sunset. 3. And this past weekend we had 10. But, well, I think there was 11, but 10 raced. Add those 20 in there. Then you add junior sprints. Then you add in, let's see, the bandoleros, which are coming. All of a sudden now, you've got a lot of young racers coming in. And it's our job as people within the racing community to make sure that those names get pushed, that partners look their way, and that racing is seen as an opportunity for those partnerships. It's not the easiest thing. We all know that. Trying to get these everybody to buy in, because costs. We know costs are just so expensive, and it's tough to do things. But the racing community comes together so very well. They care about each other as much as we have people that disagree on the racetrack, that fight, that talk crap about each other. The amount of support and appreciation that there is only shows that when banded together, there's even more on the horizon. I think we tend to forget it. It's so easy as race fans to look at the negative. And we look at it and go, is there ways that we can make the product better? As a fan first, and that's what I will always be, a fan first, I'm going to speak and ask the question, could we do this? My goal is not to insult anybody, not to cause any rumor, not to cause anything to be stirred up. But what we want to do is we want to help. We want to do whatever we can to help our grassroots racing stay intact and grow and grow and grow. I think we're seeing more and more podcasts sprouting up. We're seeing a lot more social media interaction. That can only help us. You know, posting stuff on TikTok, Instagram posts, Facebook posts. These are all things that help get the word out. But you know what also gets the word out is these streams. Strong Co, perfect example. Pedal Power. We shift gears a little bit. Now, I don't know if people watched and are watching Pedal Power on a regular. If you haven't, you should. Pedal Power 51 on YouTube. Pedal Power 51 is, to me, the gold standard. Strong Co is getting right up there as well. The gold standard for showcasing full races. Sure, they cut out cautions, which is ideal. And it allows people that aren't able to make it out to the racetrack to see the events. And it helps in circumstances where I want to talk about something and I'd like to show what I'm talking about. Now, I'm guessing it's now been potentially... Oh, here it is. Okay. So this situation happened, and I don't know how much we want to talk about stuff that really doesn't or could have been really, really bad. There was a situation at Flamborough in the pure stock division that really could have gone bad. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, because this the computer always seems to give me grief when I'm trying to play YouTube on this particular laptop. But the gist of it is, and if you haven't seen it, it is on YouTube under Pedal Power, and it is the Hogan Law and McClurkland Properties of Cambridge Pure Stocks for June 15th. And it is the second feature. And a car is hooked. The car of Chance Rogers is hooked, and it gets turned dead left into the infield. And there was a photographer standing in that area. We've had cars go over. We had a car last year, two of them actually, I believe, go over the wall at Flamborough. We've had people be injured because cars went over the wall. As somebody who's in media and has been close to the walls while taking video during races, there's a wall, half wall at least, in front of me. When you're in the infield, you're pretty close to being okay. However, there's not the inside wall at Flamborough. There's not one there. So when a car gets spun, most of the time I assume that the momentum is not, like, you're not going fast enough to travel that far in. This one was pretty close. And it's just a reminder that when we're out there, that we always have to be careful. And that goes for everyone, because when I talk about racing as such a great thing, it is. But not everybody is quick to love it. And if a serious injury were to take place, or God forbid, a death, things would close really quickly. Liability-wise. There's always some sort of risk, but we don't need stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm hoping that situation doesn't ever happen again. It was scary. And then, of all things, the same night that happened, Mike Gilmore's tire flew off, and of all the things for it to do, it kept rolling completely on its own, right down pit road, right into the paddock, and it hit somebody's trailer. You couldn't see that happen in a million years. That of all the things for it to do, it would fly off and still be rolling and go directly down the middle line, straight into and down the hill, and get to the paddock. You'd never think that would have happened. Pedal Power has video of it. That's the Pure Stock race. Now, it adds another conversation. When do you call it? So the Pure Stock race, they had 11 to 12 cars out for the first one. And unfortunately, not everybody was able to finish. Mechanical issues took a lot of people out. And then to start the second feature, there was a big wreck that took more cars out. They had a great battle going with Matt Young and Mike Gilmore. Then Mike's tire, as we talk about, flies off. Now there's 3 cars left. And race director, I believe it's Tim Norris, made the call to end the race because there's 3 cars left. I actually think a brilliant call. Now, could there have been a fantastic race with 3 cars? Absolutely. But one of the competitors had told me that they were told, when it's not your night, it's not your night. What a great call. Fans can be upset, and they can, but at the end of the day, do you want to watch a parade or do you want to watch a race? And in situations where a division is just not working and the night is just not going well for them, it's better to move on with the show than continue with the circus. And personally, I look at the OSS race and I say, you know what? We probably should have counted cautions. The amount of cautions that we were having. And that goes to, again, does there need to be a limit before you say, okay, enough? It's the full moon. We got guys driving like donkeys out there. What are we going to do here? I actually love the call. I think it was a great decision. If you need to, do something quick. Say if the mini stocks aren't working, okay, let's do a pure stock dash for cash. And I believe they did that a couple weeks ago when they there wasn't enough super stocks, and they did dash for cash just because they need something else on the card. Great idea. Racers aren't, they want to race, so give people an opportunity to do it. It's always a lot of fun having this show, being able to talk stuff out. We got through a lot of the conversations actually that I wanted to get over. We didn't even touch into the Dan McHattie coming in and destroying the field out at Peterborough in the APC series, because again, what APC did is genius. What they did is they opened it up for those weekly competitors to be in that race. Genius. Make it available for the weekly racers. It's what I really wanted, availability for cars or something for the NASCAR Canada Series. If you have a touring series that isn't there very often, and a perfect example is if you take like the NASCAR Canada Series, where a large chunk of their racers, sure, there's some that have been around for years that people are well aware of, but a large majority, 3/4 of that series is from Quebec. And you're going to go and take them to a track where no one knows who they are. But if you go in and all of a sudden, let's say you add in, if we're going to Sunset and we add in a Dale Shaw, we add on a Billy Zardo, a Lane Zardo. All of a sudden, now we're talking here. Now we've got you've got racers that people know. And I take it back to going to Delaware and Ray Morneau Jr., and he had the biggest reaction than most of the other racers, aside from maybe DJ Kennington. That's what you need. If it's what I think about with OSS. We had Billy Zardo in our race last year. And but I think that's what you got to have. You got to have somebody that's there weekly participating. Give people a shot. That's why I think rentals are really important. As much as people don't want to do rentals, in OSS for us, especially as a touring series, it's so important. If all of a sudden you have a legend, I think that would be great for the legends and the TQs as well. Your traveling series, all of a sudden if you have like an all-star car and you put in somebody that the fans know. I'm not saying that they're not going to have their own fans from touring divisions, but there are people that go to the track and that's the only track they go to. They have no idea who these racers are. So give them somebody that they do. And now all of a sudden they're racing against them. I mean, I know that it's one of the things that I definitely want to see. And it's exciting to have opportunities to think about how we can continue to grow and we can build. One of the things that you can do to continue and grow and build our racing here in Ontario is by supporting G-Force TV. That's by subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you can, give us a thumbs up. That really helps us with the algorithm. And, of course, tuning in and week out here for ONTrack Weekly, Race Rivals Race Chat, Oshweekend Speedway Racing here on G-Force TV. Every Monday here at 7 o'clock, we'll be talking ONTrack Weekly. We'll be talking Ontario racing. And, of course, Fridays, Oshweekend Racing live here from the Big O and Race Rivals Race Chat with Clinton Jeffrey and Adam Ross every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. I am Cam K. I've been your host for tonight. We're back racing once again next week. It's going to be very hot. Everybody take care of yourselves. If you are racing, start hydrating now. We want to make sure everybody is nice and safe out of the racetrack. And take care, everybody. Have yourselves a great week. Again, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. Share. Have yourselves a great week, everybody. We'll catch you all for ONTrack Weekly. Let's go next week, 7 o'clock.